What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you back another installment of our Dynasty Decisions series we do over here at the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel. So you guys have been showing so much support. Again, you would have already seen yesterday that we posted a Dynasty Decisions. We're back to back like we're fucking Drake, man. We're back to back like Jordan 96, 97. We're out here ready to give you another Dynasty Decisions episode. But before we do that, Corey, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. And like we said yesterday, if you DM'd me, for the most part, we included some of Danny's DMs yesterday, then you would have seen your team already broken down on yesterday's episode. So if you missed yesterday's episode and you're like, why is my team not on here? I DM'd, Bush and he didn't put his team on here. He's such a jackass. No, it's because we did it yesterday. So go out and check out yesterday's video. There'll be timestamps in the description to say whoever was in that video, who's there, and you can check for your team in that part. So yeah, check the timestamps. If you're in yesterday's video, you will see your name there. So I'm doing good. I'm ready to get this going. You guys know we're on the road to 5K subscribers, trying to get there by August 1st. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on all of our videos. If we've talked about your team on a Dynasty Decisions, that's the support we're looking for. It's totally free to do, and it helps us out tremendously. So make sure you guys go ahead and do that on every video of ours. We're going to hit the intro, and we're going to get right into this.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the first team in the video, and that's going to be from DanielV. He's got his team on the screen, and he's got a few questions for us. So, again, if you're watching this, this is the type of format we like seeing when you DM us. And as we said, if you send us an Excel file, nice and organized, guess what? You're going to be one of the first discussed people in the video. So if you want your question answered early, send it like this, because Daniel did a very good job here. You see on the screen, Mahomes, Tannehill, Fields, Fitzpatrick as his main quarterbacks. Elliott, Harris, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, Gus Edwards, and a couple others at running back. Wide receiver, McLaurin, Cooper, Fuller, Aguilar, Beasley, Shepard, and some fodder. And then at tight end, you got Komet, Logan Thomas, Irv Smith Jr. for the most part. And what it looks like to be, he's missing his third and fourth in 2022. He's missing, okay, it's not really organized, but regardless, you see his picks on the right side of the screen. The question that he has here is, can I contend this year, or should I look more towards a rebuild? The second question, should I trade Mahomes and roll with Fields, Tannehill, and Fitzpatrick? And third, are there any trades I should consider to help my team go in the right direction? So it's a one quarterback PPR Dynasty League. First question, can he contend this year? I believe he can contend this year, this team. You're looking at that team. Mahomes and Tannehill should be your presumptive starters at quarterback, with Fields being that QB3. Running back, Elliott, Harris, Javonte Williams. Like you have both top-end talent with Elliott and Harris, with a lot of upside and a lot of youth at the running back with Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. And we've talked in depth that Gus Edwards is not only a really good handcuff, but should have some solid standalone value on his own right.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me when I look at your team is your wide receiver 3/4 spot behind Will Fuller and your top two receivers, right? I love your top two receivers, but I'm assuming you got to flex, receivers week in and week out, and that's the weakest point in your roster. I know you don't have an elite tight end on your team, but between Logan Thomas, Cole Kmet, and Irv Smith, I think you're fine at tight end. I don't think I would go out and try and get a TJ Hawkinson or a Mark Andrews unless you can get them for cheap. But my thing and how I would upgrade your team is probably take Ryan Fitzpatrick and move him, because you could probably go out in your league and find a quarterback needy team. Maybe they only have two quarterbacks on their roster. Maybe they have, three quarterbacks, but one of them's Jared Goff and the other one's, Ben Roethlisberger or something like that. I would go target that team and try and get them a more stable option in Ryan Fitzpatrick, at least for this season. I'm assuming that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be at minimum a top 20 quarterback, more likely a top 15 quarterback. And you could probably get a solid wide receiver piece for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Even if it is a veteran, you could probably flip Ryan Fitzpatrick to a quarterback needy team for an Adam Thielen, for a, even an Odell Beckham or a Jarvis Landry, just to solidify your third or fourth wide receiver spot a little bit more than it is.
Yeah, if you can get that for Fitzpatrick, take that on the spot. Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to be able to get something like that. But however, if you can get like a Corey Davis, even I would do that. Like, even if, again, having that more stable depth wide receiver is probably your only real weakness here. Maybe at tight end, you got a little bit of a question mark, but I like the youth and I like the potential of the guys you have on your team. Overall, I think this is a very solid team. You have all the majority of your picks intact. I think this could be a very solid team for you for the foreseeable future. So See what you can get for Fitzpatrick. Maybe try to upgrade to, again, like say a Corey Davis. But other than that, I think you're in a really good spot.
Yeah, and he says, should I trade Mahomes and roll with Fields,
No.
Tannehill, and Fitzmagic? No, don't do that. Patrick Mahomes is worth so much in Dynasty that I'm really never wanting to move him, to be honest. If I have Patrick Mahomes, I don't really want to move him. And if I'm going to move him, I better get some Godfather type of offer for him.
I just noticed it's a 1 quarterback league.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's a 1 quarterback league.
So let's go over it now. Okay, so you guys got our super flex thoughts on it. Now, from his perspective, in a 1 quarterback league, yeah, I would ship Mahomes if you can get a really good receiver for him. Honestly, I would.
Yeah, I would too.
That changes it now.
Like Tannehill and Justin Fields, you got your future covered. You got some upside there. I still think Tannehill has an elite upside season in him for the next couple of years that Julio Jones is going to be in town. And Justin Fields, we know the rushing ability alone is going to make him capable of that elite ceiling. So yeah, now that it is a non-super flex league, and I know that, absolutely I would try and shop Patrick Mahomes. If you can get, what kind of receiver are we looking for? If you can get Jamar Chase for Patrick Mahomes, you think someone would give you that?
Possibly. Maybe most wishful scenario, like a Chase, a CeeDee Lamb. Maybe you settle for like even a Godwin. I don't think that's settling at all. Like that type of elite, low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver type or 2 type, I would be looking for.
Yeah, I absolutely think. And you can even, if you wanted to increase some of your longevity, you could go for like 2 young guys. If you could get like an Ayuk and a Claypool or something like that, to fill out your wide receiver depth a little bit more and still give you that youth factor that, to be honest, you don't really have in your wide receiver depth right now, because Fuller, Aguilar, and Beasley are your next best 3 wide receivers behind the 2 studs. And none of those guys are young ascending players, really.
Yep, 100%. So we can get on to the next team, unless you have anything else you want to add here.
Nope, that's good.
All right, so we got Alejandro's team and questions. So as you guys can see, the team on the screen: Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Mac Jones in particular, quarterback. Running back, you got JT, J.K. Dobbins, Leonard Fournette, with some others at running back. Wide receiver: Julio, Chase, Pittman, Mooney, Elijah Moore. Very good receiving core. And that tight end, your main tight end there, is going to be Noah Fant. So he says here it's a 1 quarterback league, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. Oh, so it's a super flex. Actually, he wrote the super flex at the end. So super flex, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers start, 2 flex spots, and a tight end. He wants our initial thoughts on this team, especially to go into his wide receiver depth. And he's basically trying to upgrade his wide receivers with a stack, thinking about maybe Julio in the first for Higgins. So let's get into this right here. In a super flex league, Burrow, Mayfield are your starters. Mac Jones coming as his 3. I think this is a very, very fun, very youthful quarterback core. I think you're in a pretty solid spot there. Running back, again, those main 2 are really bread and butter type of picks. Questionable after them, I will say. I mean, after JK and JT, you don't really have many exciting young running backs that I'd be looking for, especially if you're trying to compete. But at wide receiver, looking at this team right now, Julio Jones just seems like a misfit in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish. To me, this is a team that is first or second year players that will really gel together and probably be at their peaks in 2023, 2024. This is the most you can get for Julio Jones right now, comparatively to what you'll be getting in 2023, what you'll be getting in 2024. So initial thoughts, I would say right here, try to flip Julio Jones. If you can flip him for maybe a first and a second, or if you could flip him for something like that. He says Julio in a first for Higgins. That's probably a little steep, given that I wouldn't want to give the first in your scenario, considering that this is a team that I'd want to add to with future picks.
He also already has Chase too, right?
Yeah, so you have Chase. I think getting Higgins there, though I like the talent, I think it's A, not really enough value for you personally, giving that first and Julio, and B, you already have Chase. It's just an overstack, in my opinion, at that point, if you're getting both Chase, Higgins with Burrow. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts, you said now is the best time to sell Julio. I disagree. I think the best time to sell Julio is during this season.
Yeah. Sorry, I meant like this year.
Because Julio is going to be good on Tennessee. Like, it's just going to happen. He's gonna be an effective fantasy wide receiver for somebody. And like Danny said, you have a very young team. You probably could borderline compete this year, but again, you probably need a lot to break right in that situation. And when you're in that situation, I'm more so looking to retool, because this is not a rebuilding team. You have a lot of very foundational pieces, but I would retool this team, look to compete in 2022. And that starts with, as soon as Julio has a blow up game, try and get rid of him. By get rid of him, I mean, try and get T. Higgins straight up for him, maybe, or Julio plus a third or plus a second, maybe for T. Higgins, or for Brandon Ayuk, or maybe Julio straight up for Jerry Jeudy, or someone that's young that you can build around on your team. And even if you just get a pick for Julio Jones, maybe someone just wants to give you a first rounder for Julio Jones, I would also probably consider something like that.
Julio for Bateman. That would make a lot of sense.
Would you do Julio straight up for Bateman, though?
I would personally take Bateman, but if Julio's having a good start to the season and that person who has Bateman is saying,
you could probably get Bateman plus for him.
If that's the case, give me that all day. I mean, getting Bateman to pair with that young wide receiver core. You got Chase, you got Pittman, you got Mooney, you got Elijah Moore. Adding Bateman to that. And then
Devontae Smith, potentially, someone like that.
Devontae Smith is another one. And then at that point, again, the only real concern I have here is just adding youth and potential at the running back position outside of those top two. But aside from that, this to me looks like a 2022, 2023 type of contender where you could really build out that RB core and maybe flip Julio again at the deadline for value. So overall, I think you're in a very good spot here. Couple tweaks, and I think you could be a really good team within the next couple of years.
Right. And you should be a good team this year, too. Like, you're not going to be a bad team. You're probably going to have a mid-first next year, assuming you still have your first. I don't think he listed if he has his first next year or not, but with that mid-first next year, you could add a stud receiver. You could add, a young running back to pair with Dobbins and JT. And like Danny said, 2022, 2023, you should be ready to contend and win your championship, hopefully, especially if some of your young pieces can work out. If Elijah Moore works out, Mac Jones, Michael Pittman, Darnell Mooney, if any of these guys can turn into cornerstone pieces for you, then your roster is going to be looking real good.
Yep, absolutely. So anything else you want to add on this team, or should we be moving on here?
No, let's move on to SpicyHot's team.
Yep. So give me a second. I'll read it off for you guys so you guys can see on the screen his Bush League team. A little shout out there for Bushy Boy himself. But this is a 14-team super flex dynasty startup. It's got 2 divisions. It's an 8-man playoff. So pretty fun over here. His questions are that he's 5 players over the roster limit. He needs to pick 2 players to add on his taxi squad, and he needs to drop 3 more. His main things is that he can wait until close to the season, but he just wants our early thoughts on who he should drop and who he should add to the taxi squad. Did he go too young in the draft? Should I be selling for more purse? And overall, how to improve if this team is looking good. So right off the bat, you guys can see it. Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones is his nucleus in a 14-team superflex. Absolutely loaded spot to be in there, especially in a 14-teamer with those quarterbacks are more scarce than anything. Running backs, Antonio Gibson, Javonte Williams, Trey Sermon, and Gus Edwards as his main building blocks. Wide receiver, a ton of young talent there, absolutely loaded. AJB, both the Moores, Jerry Jeudy, Bateman, like you really set up that.
We know SpicyHot watches the channel with a team like this.
Absolute sharp here. And then Irv Smith as the young breakout tight end. And he's got 2 firsts in 2022, a second in 2022, and 2 seconds in 2023. You guys can see the picks on the right side of the screen. So overall, you did fantastic with this team. I mean, what you're able to do in acquiring, appreciating assets, still getting a first in 2022 and a second in 2023, despite being able to accumulate this amount of talent. Great job here. In terms of your question, the taxi squad spots, I'm reserving personally those 2 taxi squad spots for looking at it right now. Probably I would say Hunter Long and Bryan Edwards, maybe.
I would go Hunter Long and Khalil Herbert just because I think it's probably more likely that Bryan Edwards is more valuable this year than Khalil Herbert is valuable this year. The only way Khalil Herbert's getting on the field is if Montgomery or Cohen or both has to go down in that situation, because you still have Damian Williams on that depth chart to compete with for Khalil Herbert. And I think he's more of a modest piece for sure your roster. He's probably not going to be a guy that you're going to be relying on anyway. So I would put Herbert and Hunter Long on the taxi squad. Bryan Edwards can be some solid receiver depth for you. He's an exciting-ish young receiver that maybe you could move at some point in the season if he starts to have some blow-up games, or you just hold on to him and he could turn into something for you. So that's who I would go with the taxi squad. As far as the 3 guys that you have to drop, to me, the obvious one is Thaddeus Moss. I mean, he's gone. Like, I mean, hasn't shown anything in the NFL. He's only on your roster because he's Randy Moss's son, let's be honest. And Kendrick Bourne to me is another guy. As much as Kendrick Bourne might have a role this year, they paid him. He might be useful. Your receiving core is good enough that you don't really need to rely on a guy like Kendrick Bourne. So I would drop him as well. And then the third spot is really where it gets dicey, right? To me, the obvious one is the 2 quarterbacks. And the only way you said you can wait until closer to the season. That is obviously the situation you want to be in, waiting closer to the season, because
ship them for a pick.
Yeah, you could ship him for whatever you can get for him is what I would probably try and do now. If somebody's willing to give you a 4th round pick for Andy Dalton, that solves your problem, right? You get a 4th round pick out of it and you don't have to drop the guy. Or
you could probably
Jimmy
get a
G, if
third
someone's
for him.
willing to give you a 3rd for either of these guys, just go ahead and do it because these guys don't have any value. I would almost be willing to straight up drop these guys, but you don't want to do that because technically they are starting quarterbacks right now. And if we get closer to the season and Justin Fields is named the starter, then I would just drop Andy Dalton. But at this point, you're probably better off to just shop them, see if you can get anything for them. Anything. Like literally any kind of draft capital will work. If it's a 2024 3rd round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, just trade him because you're going to probably drop him anyway.
Yeah, 100%. So overall, he says, did I go too young in the draft? No, you did it perfectly. You got appreciating talent. And let me tell you, 2023, this team is going to be nearly unstoppable.
I think next year it's going to be unstoppable, to be honest.
Yeah,
not even 2023. And you got young appreciating talent, but you still have some studs too. You still have Gibson. You still have AJ Brown. You still have the 2 young quarterbacks, specifically the 2 rushing quarterbacks. And you have Javonte Williams. Like you have some guys that could legitimately be elite players this year. So, ride out this year. You're probably going to not make the playoffs, I would imagine. You might make the playoffs if some of these guys work out and things break right for you. But you're probably going to be a middling team this year. But you have so much young talent, so much appreciating value on your team that you're going to be able to make a lot of moves in the future, be flexible, acquire more draft capital, potentially go all in if a lot of these pieces break right. You have a lot of flexibility with this roster.
Yep, 100%. And overall, how to improve if the team is looking good. Honestly, I just hold pat. You have 2 2022 first to add to this young nucleus. In general, I think you're in a very, very favorable spot. And again, you mentioned 2022, this team should end up developing from a fringe playoff team to a possible league dominant type team. I mean, just looking at the value, the top end talent, the depth, you're in a fucking fantastic spot here.
Yeah. And those 2022 firsts are a spot where I would really consider that at the draft, like when we're in rookie fever, is shipping those for veterans potentially. Yeah. When if Javonte Williams comes out and he's a stud and DJ Moore breaks out, Jerry Jeudy breaks out, and one of these 2 rookies break out, like you're going to be in a position next year that you can win a championship. And at that point, I'd be like, you know what? Do I want to take my 2022 first and ship it for an elite tight end like, Kyle Pitts or something, or Darren Waller or something like that? You could absolutely pull off a move like that if this time next year you're looking at your team and you're like, this team can compete for a championship.
Yep, absolutely. So any other thoughts here? Or can we go on to Gingerale? All right. Gingerale's team in questions. You guys see the team on the screen, but Josh Allen as his main quarterback. This is a 1 quarterback league, by the way. Newton, Locke, Mills. Running back, you got Chubb, Zeke, Dobbins, Swift, Edwards. Oh my goodness. Great job there. Wide receivers, you got Diggs, Ridley, Juju, Samuel, Devonta. And tight end, you got Irv Smith and Cole Kmet in particular. He's got his 2022 first, but he doesn't have a first in 2023 or 2024. So his 2 main questions here that he has. What should I do to get better? He says for the tight end position that Kelsey and Pitts are not available. I'm assuming he's tried to get them, but unfortunately the other owners are not willing to part with them. And his second question, any guys I should try and move on from now? If so, what for? So first question, he's basically saying here, how do I upgrade my tight end position? The only thing I could possibly consider is maybe you offered an Irv Smith and a 1st round pick and you probably snagged like a TJ Hawkinson. Aside from that, really, though, like I'm not urgent to upgrade this position. I think Irv Smith and Cole Kmet should do you fine. But hey, if the owner wants to take that type of deal, 2022 first and Irv, or 2022 first and Kmet, and downgrade from Hawkinson to one of those options, that's the type of move you consider, considering where your roster is currently at in terms of a win now type of opportunity. What are your thoughts on that in terms of input?
Yeah, I would only make a deal like that for Waller, Andrews, or Hawkinson. I would not do that for Noah Fant. I would not do that for Dallas Goedert. I would probably like those guys would be the ones I would do that for. And again, I don't think it's a big deal. You have 2 exciting young tight ends, in my opinion, but this team looks like it can compete, right? And that's the draw with going after an Andrews or a Hawkinson, is that they're going to help you compete more because you have some guys that are in their primes right now, like Nick Chubb, like Zeke Elliott, like Josh Allen, like Stephon Diggs, like Calvin Ridley. You got some guys in their primes and you could absolutely compete this year. I think your team is ready to go. I don't think you really need to do anything at all because I think those tight ends should do you fine in this season. The only question mark I really have, and it's not a pending, pressing need, is what happens if Josh Allen gets hurt this year?
That is fair too. You don't really have necessarily a locked up second quarterback. Again, maybe if you can flip I don't even know what the fuck is like a veteran quarterback would be worth.
Tom Brady. You could go after Tom Brady.
For what, a third though? Like, what's he worth?
I think you could get him for a 2.
No, would you give a 2 though?
Yes,
in a one quarterback league.
Brady. Yes,
in one quarterback.
Yeah, I would. You're gonna be picking late in the draft. I would give a late 2 for Tom Brady easily. And again, it doesn't have to be Tom Brady. You could go after a young quarterback too. If you wanted to go after Zach Wilson or Mac Jones or something, just so you have a solidified quarterback in case anything happens to Josh Allen. Because if anything happens to Josh Allen, that could derail your entire season, right? Like you have nobody behind Josh Allen. And even if you just wanted to secure it for this year, just so it doesn't derail this season, you could send a 3rd round pick for Ryan Fitzpatrick, just so you have somebody in case Josh Allen gets hurt. Or you could go for somebody like Matt Ryan or Kirk Cousins or somebody that's a little bit more unstable future and just secure that secondary quarterback option, because I have a feeling Cam Newton is not going to be starting games this year, much at all, if he even starts any. And Drew Lock, I don't want anything to do with. Davis Mills, I don't really believe in long term. So I would just secure a second quarterback. And again, don't go overboard. Don't go over and acquire Russell Wilson or Ryan Tannehill or Joe Burrow or anything. Just a guy that you can start, whether it's a young guy or a veteran. I would need a second quarterback that I can use.
Yep, absolutely. And the other thing that I'd possibly say as well is maybe kind of explore the market for Juju Smith-Schuster, because myself and Corey are both a little bit lower on him, but I know there are Juju truthers out there. He's 24 years old, coming off a 97 reception season. Maybe you could
be a piece that you could use to get a quarterback too.
That's true too. Like if you could pull Juju straight up for like
Sam Darnold.
Do you think, I was about to say, even like you could probably get Justin Fields for Juju in a one quarterback, man.
I don't know about that. I think Sam
quarterback?
Darnold, Carson Wentz is more the value you're looking at. Maybe Zach Wilson. If you could get Zach Wilson straight up for Juju Smith-Schuster, I would absolutely do that.
Dude, honestly though, if we're looking at it straight up in a one quarterback league, with Justin Fields probably an early 2nd round pick in rookie drafts.
Yeah, I mean, if you could pull that off, I don't know if you're going to be able to, but if you could pull that off, that's absolutely a deal I would make.
Yep, absolutely. So overall, look at that type of deal. Aside from that, you're in a really good position. So let's move on to the next team, because we don't want to drag each one on. And we got OG Juice's team and questions. And you guys can see on the screen, this guy went full ham on this Excel sheet. Really quick shout out right there. But we'll just show you the first part. We'll read off the notes to you personally. So you guys can see the team. Let me just zoom 150 here. Okay. So one quarterback league, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, a defense, and it's full PPR. At quarterback, again, you're looking at Josh Allen as the starting quarterback. We might have to put Josh Allen on the thumbnail because it seems like a lot of teams have Josh Allen. Running back, Mixon, Hunt as the 2 starters with a little bit of fodder behind. Wide receiver, Odell, Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, a Hollywood Brown with Davis, Ruggs in particular behind. Tight end, you got TJ Hawkinson. And then defenses, you got Dolphins and Browns, but we're not really going to talk about the defenses because I don't know, if you're in a defensive league, you would probably know more about them than I would personally. So he has the rookie draft that he just finished where he got Tony, Rogers, Hubbard, and Eskridge. His draft capital is on the right side of the screen, but you see he has 4 2022 firsts in particular. And he wanted us to basically go over the big trades that he's done and kind of where he can move on from here with his question. So first of all, his first trade, he received Corey Davis, Hollywood Brown, a 2022 first and 2022 second for Gus Edwards, 2021 first, and the picks on the side there. So overall, I think that's pretty fair value. I mean, you're basically upgrading from Edwards to Davis, and you're getting Hollywood Brown basically for a third, and you're just moving your picks from 2021 to 2022 is what I see here. So overall, I really like this deal for you. As much as I like Gus Edwards, I do think Corey Davis can be more valuable long-term.
Right. And if we assign a player to that pick, right, I don't know where he was picking in the first round this year, because it looks like he just traded out of the first round and acquired a pick next year, which is always a good thing to do, right? If you don't have conviction about a player, if the best player on the board is somebody you don't believe in, maybe you're a BMI truther and you don't believe in Devontae Smith, that's fine. Trade out of the first round and get a first round pick next year, because that pick is always going to be appreciating in value. But if this is a Devontae Smith or a Rashad Bateman that you traded out of, I would have just picked the player personally, because I really believe in those guys. And first round picks, we've said this before, first round picks this year are worth a lot more than they usually are, in my opinion. I think the first round is a big tier break this year than it is in normal seasons. Like last year, you could get guys like potentially even Justin Jefferson in the second round, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman's and stuff like that. Whereas this year, I think the first round is locked in a super flex format. This isn't a super flex format, so this is a one quarterback league. Maybe you were staring down the barrel of a Elijah Moore or a Terrace Marshall at the end of the first round, and at that point, it's definitely worth it to just take the first next year and move on.
Over Moore, I wouldn't, but over once you get into like Rondale, Terrace Marshall, that's kind of when I would, I agree with that. But again, in your spot, overall, I think that's a pretty fair value deal. And you look at the second trade here, you gave up Jacobs in a second and Andy Dalton in one quarterback, which is basically fucking worthless. Let's be honest here. For Tevin Coleman, fodder, but the main things I look at here is Ruggs, Pittman, first, a second, and 2/3. So if you're looking at it straight up, swap out the seconds, or they're the same thing, whatever. Who cares? It's basically what I'm seeing here is Pittman, Ruggs, and a first for Jacobs. And if that's what you got for Jacobs, that is absolutely not an undersell. He thinks here, oh, maybe I probably should have got more for Jacobs. I think that's a perfectly fine deal here. You're talking about a 2022 first. Let's assume it's mid to late. So let's say in a 12-team league, we're looking at the 107, the 108, let's just say hypothetically. So you're getting the 107, the 108, Henry Ruggs, and Michael Pittman, who are both young ascending wide receivers, for Josh Jacobs, who, while we like him, realistically here, we're looking at in a one quarterback league, probably a late third, early fourth round type of startup pick, maybe a mid third startup pick, versus Pittman and Ruggs. Pittman's probably going to go in about the 8th, 9th round. Ruggs probably going to go in about the 10th round, and you're getting a first round pick out of it. So from a straight value standpoint, I absolutely love what you did there. I think it's pretty fair value overall. Talk about the rest of his questions, though. What is the most you would offer for Kyle Pitts? He was drafted 101. I love the player, but I just don't want to cloud my judgment. He said Hawkinson would be in the trade. And max here I'd offer is probably Hawkinson in the first, but realistically here, like if he doesn't do that, I would just hold Hawkinson.
Right. Would you go Hawkinson? Because he has 2 2s in 2023. Would you go Hawkinson, a first, and a 2023 second for Pitts? I would do something like that. That's probably the highest I would go, though. I wouldn't go, you have 4 firsts next year. I would not give like 2 firsts in Hawkinson for Pitts.
Absolutely not. So I agree there. That's probably around fair. What type of running back should I target for depth or upgrade? Again, this is a team that's going to compete in 2022, 2023. I'm not urgently trying to acquire depreciating running backs. I'm just going to probably hold pat, see what's available in 2022. Again, you're looking at a decent running back class. You got Breece Hall, you got Isaiah Spiller in particular. I would just hold and kind of see what's available. Again, you're going to own almost half of the first round, and you're going to have a lot of flexibility regardless to make moves then. So I wouldn't be urgent on just trying to acquire a win now running back, because, hey, you not picking a running back right now is going to help you get that pick higher regardless. So, and then finally, he also says here, what are your thoughts? What approach should I take? What moves do you recommend? You can start with this one.
Yeah, there's 2 moves in particular that I see on the board. And that's actually 3, I guess, but one's not really worth that much. You have 2 old receivers in Brandon Cooks and Odell Beckham. I would try and move those guys because this is a retool to 2022 and beyond situation. And to me, the golden goose that you have on your team is Joe Mixon. I would try and trade Joe Mixon ASAP. You have 4 firsts next year. You have a young team, and you probably can't compete this year. So what I'm looking to do is acquire a guy like DeAndre Swift in particular for Joe Mixon, because your team is going to be 2022 and beyond. I don't really believe in DeAndre Swift this year, but going forward, I absolutely think he's going to appreciate in value. J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I would go out and try and acquire one of these guys for Joe Mixon.
If you could somehow pull Gibson.
I don't think you'll be able to do that, but if you can, absolutely do that too.
100%. So overall, aside from that, again, you got those older assets. Maybe you look at Odell, Cooks, Mixon, and maybe even Hunt as trade candidates, depending on the type of value you can get. So overall, again, there's a very good setup team to compete in 2022, 2023 beyond, especially with that draft capital you receive. So we can go on to the next team.
Real quick, too, also target the rookie running backs with Joe Mixon, too. If you could go out get Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, or Najee Harris in some kind of package involve Joe Mixon, that's also a move I would be looking to make as well.
Yep, absolutely. And apparently he actually said here in his rookie draft he wanted a Michael Carter at 204, but he couldn't trade up for the pick, so that's pain. And he ended it off with "Go Cowboys, let's go." But we can get on to the next team. And what do we have? 2 left? 3 left? We have like 3 or 4 left. So we'll get on to KyroPhantom so you guys can see the team. But quarterbacks, you got Wentz and Sam Darnold as the starters, with Winston, Brissett, Jimmy Garoppolo filling it out. Running back, you got Cook, Henry, Eckler in particular. Wide receivers, you got Adams, Gallup, Deontay, Elijah Moore in particular. Tight ends, Higbee, Long, Freiermuth, and he's all his picks in the future. So he wanted us to outline his 2 startup deals he did, and overall how we can improve this team or transition this team. So his 2 startup deals, he traded up from the 712 to the 705, and he gave up his future 2022 second. So aside from that second, I'm assuming, He gave up his 2022 second, but in the next deal, he ended up acquiring another one. So that's why I said he has all the picks. So he moved the 712 for the 705 and gave up that second to trade up for Deontay Johnson. Overall, again, if that was a tier break on your board, I'm fine with making a type of move like that. Say you're looking at the difference between Deontay Johnson and who's even going at the end of the 7th round at receiver. Like,
it could be his teammate, could be Chase Claypool, it could be we could be looking at like even like a Kenny Golladay potentially going there. Given the age discrepancy, I could see why someone would want to move up for Deontay Johnson in that kind of situation. So yeah, if Deontay Johnson was viewed as a tier ahead of those guys, absolutely fine with that move.
Yep. And then the second deal, he traded away his 8-1 and 9-12. And in return, he got the 908, the 1108, the 1308, and a future second. So his 8-1 and 9-12, he doesn't say who was picked there, but with the picks that he acquired in that deal, he turned the 8-1 and 9-12 into Elijah Moore, Michael Gallup, Mike Williams, and a second-round pick. So just judging off of straight player value at those picks, I absolutely love every single one of those picks, and you got a 2022 second out of it.
Yeah, the 8-1 in particular, I'd really like to know who that was because, again, maybe it was a tier break for that person, and it could be a tier break for us as well. Like, what if the 8-1 was, Kenny Golladay or Devontae Smith or something like that? Because in that case, I'd be like, that's a little questionable. But Elijah Moore, Michael Gallup, and Mike Williams, those guys should be, cornerstone depth pieces at the bare minimum for your wide receiver core. And I don't mind that move at all, given the fact that your wide receiver core, I would say, is probably the weakest position on your team outside of maybe quarterback, especially with top end talent. And you got some guys that could turn into top end talent, and Elijah Moore in particular.
Yep, 100%. So what are your initial thoughts on how we can improve this team personally?
I think this team is capable of competing, and mainly because of those 3 running backs, right? You have Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, who are 2 of the top 4 running backs in fantasy this year specifically, should be good for the next 2 to 3 years, assuming, health and things of that nature. They are depreciating assets, but I still wouldn't mind going for the championship right away because you have Cook, because you have Henry, because you have Eckler, because you have Devontae Adams. You should be able to compete this year. So going forward, I would be looking to find ways to increase flexibility and longevity if you can, but I don't want to sell low on some of these guys. Like Derrick Henry, if you're only getting a guy like DeAndre Swift back for Derrick Henry, I probably wouldn't make a move like that. But if you could somehow flip Derrick Henry for Cam Akers or Antonio Gibson, then I would make a move like that because that'll increase your longevity and your flexibility going forward in the future.
The one thing I'll say, this is a team totally dependent on how you're doing midseason. If you're like 4-4 or under at the trade deadline and your quarterbacks are kind of letting you down, let's just say hypothetically, and let's just say Cook, Henry, and Adams in particular are really off the firing stars, it's just the rest of the roster isn't able to hold, that's when I would say, okay, you know what? I'm at the deadline. Dalvin Cook is averaging 25 points per game, or Derrick Henry's averaging 25 points per game, and you could pull off, let's just say, an Akers starts off to a slow start. A Gibson starts off to a slow start. You mentioned DeAndre Swift. You can get DeAndre Swift and maybe a small pick for either of those guys. That's something I would consider, especially Henry in particular, because I do think he's more depreciating than Dalvin Cook, given the fact that he is a bigger running back that relies more on the carries as opposed to Cook has, again, a little bit more of a receiving floor. So that's what I look at there, something like that if you're struggling at midseason. But again, this could fully be a team that you're looking at the midseason, and you're 6-2, and you say, okay, I have all my future picks right now, but I really think I can contend with this team. Then you can say, okay, you know what? 2022 first I can offer for 2022 first and Darnold, and I can upgrade my quarterback too. Maybe you can pull off a Tannehill for something like that. That's the type of moves that I'd be looking at. But this is fully, again, a team dependent on how you're doing going up to that trade deadline on the type of transition I'd be able to make in terms of either reloading for 2022, 2023, or going all out to try to get it in 2021.
Yeah, and I would say the pivot point is your QBs, right? If we get Carson Wentz from 2017, you're going to be in good shape. If we get Sam Darnold at USC turning into the next Ryan Tannehill, getting away from Adam Gase, then you're going to be in a good position. But if Darnold plays like Jets Darnold, if Wentz plays like the last 2 years Philadelphia, and Jameis Winston might be your best quarterback at that point, or Taysom Hill might be starting. So you could get into a real doomsday scenario pretty quickly with your quarterback situation. And like Danny said, if that's the case, look to part with some of those elite options that you have.
Absolutely. So I think we can get on to the next team. We have now we have 4 left. So we're going to get into Corey Vann's team. It's a 12-team, 1 quarterback, half PPR. So quarterbacks, he's got Justin Herbert and Zach Wilson. Running backs, pretty weak, but he's got Robinson, Moss, Fournette, Michael Carter, Jamal Williams, Damian Williams, and some fodder. Wide receivers, McLaurin, Lamb, Pittman, Curtis Samuel, and Elijah Moore in particular. Tight ends, he's got Gerald Everett and some fodder behind. He doesn't have his first in 2022 or 2023. So what are your initial thoughts on this roster?
Yeah, you can't compete with this team. You can't.
No.
Your running backs are a big time detriment to this team. You like James Robinson. Okay, what's best case scenario for James Robinson? He's the starter for the first 6 weeks of the season, first 8 weeks of the season.
A non-injury upside here. We're looking at a touchdown dependent RB2 type.
Right.
And I'm talking about low end RB2, high end RB3 type. Like we're looking at like the RB25 if ETN is even on the field.
Right. And probably the same type of situation for Zach Moss as well. Like you can't really expect too much out of him. Wide receivers, you're probably solid if you had good, like elite options at every other position when you do at quarterback with Justin Herbert. But if you had some elite running backs and an elite tight end, then your wide receivers would be good enough to contend. But given the fact that they're probably the strength of your roster, I'm probably tearing this thing down because you don't have any picks going forward. And you don't really have any way that you're going to be able to acquire an elite running back outside of selling some of your other pieces. So Justin Herbert, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, I'd be looking to sell those guys because they have high value. You could probably get some draft capital for them potentially. And you're probably not going to be ready to contend until 2023 because you got a lot of mid-round picks in the next couple of years, but you don't have any high-end draft capital.
Yep, absolutely. Again, this is a team that I'm sorry, it's just not going to be able to compete this year, probably not next year. So the way I'm looking at it is McLaurin, you got a high price tag. See you later. Lamb, heck, I fucking love CeeDee Lamb. But in this scenario, if you can get 2-3 first round picks probably for CeeDee Lamb, given the type of value that we've seen him going on in the community, you can probably get 2 firsts and a decent roster depth piece or 3 firsts for CeeDee Lamb. And I'm taking that in a heartbeat. Same thing with McLaurin, probably a little bit of a lesser degree because he's kind of more consistently viewed as less value than CeeDee Lamb. But still, if you get offered 2 firsts again and a small depth piece for McLaurin, I'm taking that any day of the week. So overall, this is a team you punt for the future. You get your 2022 first, 2023 first, 2024 first, whatever you can get. And this is a team that, in my opinion, within the next few years, if you attack this rebuild right, could end up contending. But given the state of the roster right now, I simply wouldn't be looking to do so.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And again, those rookie running backs might be a piece that you could acquire for CeeDee Lamb. If you can acquire Javonte Williams in a first-round pick and maybe a mid-round pick after that, like that's something that you could definitely acquire. But as always, when you're rebuilding a team, running back should be the last thing that you acquire. So If you're going to acquire running backs in this deal, I would look for some guys that are going to have their best years ahead of them, which would be Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, potentially J.K. Dobbins, someone like that, or just load up on draft picks.
Yeah, I wouldn't even look to acquire any type of pieces now. I would look solely into draft picks unless you're getting a super, super young receiver. So overall, like, because let's be honest, even if you offer a DeAndre Swift, by the time you compete, like that's when he's going to start losing value in his own right.
He'll be at the end of his rookie contract, most likely by that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, again, rebuild that team. We can get into JHeit now, though. And he basically says here, hey, Danny, I was just wondering if you can give me suggestions on what to do to make this team better. He just took it over. So we can outline his trade first. You guys should see both the team and the trade on the screen. The team here in a 1 quarterback league, you got Hurts as your main starter with some quarterbacks behind him, Big Ben, Ryan, and Tua Tagovailoa. Running backs, Gibson's the only one of real value here. Wide receivers, McLaurin, A.J. Brown, Godwin, Beckham, Gallup, T. Higgins. You're in a fucking crazy spot there. Tight ends, you got Goddard, Jasicki Cook, and then you got those 2 picks in 102 and 103. So let's look at the trade real quick because let's applaud him right here because this is a fantastic deal, in my opinion, in order to make. So he gave up Stephon Diggs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and in return was able to receive Antonio Gibson, Chris Godwin, and the 103. So let's just look at it in terms of ranking these assets, especially in a 1 quarterback format. Again, in a super flex, it'd be even more swayed towards the side of getting the 103 because, again, you're looking at a Fields, you're looking at a Lawrence, you're looking at a Lance, you're looking at a Harris at that pick. But let's just talk about a 103 and a 1 quarterback because that's basically what he said here. Gibson, in my opinion, is the best asset in this deal. And I'm sure you're kind of in agreement in there, considering how highly we view him. I'd say probably Stephon Diggs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are probably the next 2 assets with 103 kind of working in there. And then Chris Godwin's probably the least valuable asset. But let's look at it like this. Let's just say the CH is worth the 103. I think it's pretty fair value in terms of where they're going in startups right now. You basically got Antonio Gibson and Chris Godwin in exchange for Stephon Diggs. And I would take, as I mentioned, Gibson straight up over Diggs. Yeah, great deal. I think that's an awesome deal for you. It's a 1 quarterback league, so we don't assume any quarterbacks are going to be going, but you have the 102 and 103. And given the state of your roster, this was a great move to make because prior to getting Gibson, you were starting LaMichael P. Ryan.
as your starting running back. Like,
well, he gave up CH as well, to be fair.
Right. Sorry. Okay. So either way, the Michael P. Ryan was a starting roster spot for you. So you needed to upgrade your running back situation badly. And you can do that now, because with Antonio Gibson as your starting running back, that 103 or the 102 that you currently possess can go to a running back or two, right? You could either get potentially Najee Harris at 102 if Pitts or Chase goes 101. If nothing else, you should be able to get a Travis Etienne or a Javonte Williams with that 103 pick if you want to go in that direction. Or you can just take the value that's given to you and make trades accordingly. Take a Kyle Pitts or take a Jamar Chase.
The one thing I'll say is, do you consider flipping Goddard for the 106 and taking Pitts at the 3 and hoping a running back falls 6?
I don't think you'll get the 106 for Goddard.
In a one quarterback league?
I don't think so. I don't think someone.
Okay, let's just say Goddard in a future second for the 106.
Yeah, if you can pull off a trade like that, I would make that move, but I don't know if you're going to be able to get that kind of value. To me, I view Etienne in that elite tier. I view him in that tier with Pitts and with Chase and with Harris in a one quarterback format. So I'm okay taking Etienne at 103. So I personally would go with Pitts or Chase or maybe Harris. And if Harris is there, that's the best case scenario for you, right? If Harris is at 102 and Chase or Pitts went 101, then you're in a great spot. You just got a running back at 102 and you can go best player available at 103. But to me, Etienne is worth that 103 pick. So I would go with, Chase, Pitts, or Harris at 102, and then also go Etienne at 103. Yeah,
I personally just couldn't take Etienne over either Pitts, Harris, or Chase personally. But hey, to each their own. Like if you personally have Etienne in that tier, don't feel pressured into not taking him there if you believe he's worth that pick. That's my advice.
And to me, the best case scenario is that Chase or Pitts go 1. So that you can go Etienne and Harris with the next 2 picks. And then you can really turn this into a competing team right away, right? Because we know, if nothing else, Harris is going to be an RB2, I would say, his rookie year. Then you got Gibson and Harris as your starting guys. Etienne is your third running back. You have a great receiving core, obviously. And then your quarterback should be great this year, at least, with Jalen Hurts. And you got some future guys there. And then Goddard's your starting tight end. So you should be able to compete year one with that team. And then you are also set up well into the future with that team as well.
Yep. So we can get on to the second last team here. So we got Wedward's here, and he basically says, "Sup fellas, just finished my startup in this league and wondering how I did and what moves I should make. He feels like he can contend, but he's also young enough to push the winning window if need be. First time doing a tier PPR, so he thinks he undervalued the tight ends and knows his wide receiver depth is a weakness. So you get to see it on the screen. It's a 10-team super flex tiered PPR. So 0.5 running back, 1.0 wide receiver, 1.5 tight end, and he's got 4 flex spots and a super flex spot in his starting roster. So you guys can see here, but quarterbacks, you got Burrow, Fields, A-Rod as the main 3. Running backs, JT, Mixon, Etienne as the main 3, and some fodder. Wide receivers, DK,
some good
A-Rod,
fodder though. Mike Davis, Gus Edwards, Daryl Henderson, Madison. That's good depth, I would say.
Yeah, like that. Again, they could see it on the screen as well. I just don't feel like reading every single name. If you guys can see it, or yeah, you know what I mean. DK, A-Rob, Cup, Robbie, Pittman, some fodder, a wide receiver. Tight end, you got Fant, Jonnu, Freiermuth, and Herndon. So he says basically here the only meaningful trade he made in his startup was that he gave up a 2020 first, 2022 third, and Irv Smith Jr. to get Travis Etienne. And considering that you locked and loaded that RB3 spot, I think that's more than fine value for Etienne.
Yeah, absolutely. That 2022 first and Irv Smith, yeah, we believe in Irv Smith, but it's still the tight end position, right? Like Irv Smith could go the way of Chris Herndon and OJ Howard and no one would be shocked, right? Like the tight ends are risky. So moving a guy like Irv Smith, who has a lot of buzz behind him right now, obviously people are really excited about Irv Smith, and locking up a bona fide stud running back, at least the way I see it, is absolutely appropriate value. And that 2022 third isn't really worth that much anyway. So I don't really even take that into account. So yeah, I love that trade for you. Your RB3 is now very strong because Mike Davis was your RB3 prior to that, and you obviously got a lot stronger at that position with the acquisition of Etienne.
Yep, absolutely. So the final thing that we're going to get into, I know we talked about Alex Rivero yesterday, but he actually gave me an update this morning. So basically the trade yesterday would have been Godwin, Dallas Goedert, a second and a third for Metcalf and a second, and he asked if we would take it. Well, he actually just completed a trade, and he acquired a little bit more than Goddard. He went after the old boy and George Kittle. So he says, "What's up, man? Regarding the trade I asked you yesterday, I decided to try to get Kittle out of him instead." And he ended up accepting this. So he wants to basically say, like, what are our thoughts on this deal? Did he overpay? Like, how can we go about this? So overall, if you're looking at this, he gave up DK Metcalf a second and third, Mooney and Gesicki, and he got back Cooper Kupp, George Kittle, Marquise Brown, Gabe Davis a second and third. So we're looking at it straight up, the main pieces here, Mooney's probably similar value to Brown and Davis if you were to compare it apples to apples, give or take. Maybe you prefer the Brown and Davis side there. So basically, we're looking at Metcalf and Gesicki for Kittle and Kupp because, the pick spot, second and third. I would prefer the Kittle and the Kupp side there. As much as I like DK Metcalf, he's a good young receiver. The discrepancy between Kittle and Gesicki is a lot larger, in my opinion, than the discrepancy between Metcalf and Kupp.
Right. And I think actually, in terms of similar value, I value Metcalf and Kittle similarly. So it's almost like they cancel each other out, in my opinion. Maybe you give a slightly into Metcalf, but Kupp versus Gesicki isn't close, obviously. So that's the way I looked at it. If you wanted to break it down a different way, like you said, I like Darnell Mooney. I think he's probably the fourth best asset in this deal behind Kupp, Kittle, and Metcalf. I think he's actually the fourth best asset in this deal. But Gabe Davis and Marquise Brown is probably enough to make up that value discrepancy there. So yeah, I agree. I think the trade he made yesterday was a little bit less than ideal just because Godwin and Dallas Goedert aren't elite talents the way that Metcalf is, I would say. And Godwin is close to Metcalf, but I would absolutely prefer Metcalf straight up over Godwin. So I think what you did getting a Kittle, who is an elite talent at his position especially, is definitely worth that deal because now you're not giving up an elite talent. You're getting one back as well. And probably also another borderline elite talent in Cooper Kupp, the way he's going to produce the next couple of years.
Yep, absolutely. And again, if we could look at the age as well, again, Kittle is older than Metcalf. But if we're looking from straight up production standpoint, would you be at all shocked if Kittle ended up with more yards next year than DK Metcalf?
Dude, I wouldn't be at all shocked if Kupp ended up with more yards than DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is the perfect deal, especially considering I'm assuming you're making this move, getting Kupp back in a win now type situation. If that's the case, you got a legitimate wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside for this year. And George Kittle, who in both of our opinions is at minimum a top 3 redraft tight end. So overall, I absolutely love the move you did here. You really made this team into a dominant force. Again, I can't see the team, but I'm assuming you're doing this as a win now type of player. I like what you did here.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Yeah, you got my tight end 1 in this deal. So in Dynasty. So that's why I really like it.
For sure. And again, if you guys have made it this far in the video, you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, you want to get in on next week's Dynasty Decisions. By the way, DM myself or Bush if you want to do that. Comment down below fodder. I refer to it every single time we go into these videos. I don't want to read off end of the bench names, so I just refer to them as fodder because guess what? If you guys don't know what fodder is, it's just a bunch of useless crap, to be quite honest. But anyways, enjoy. We'll see you guys next week for Dynasty Decisions. Keep DMing myself and Bush. We love interacting with you guys and being able to help you guys on achieving that goal of winning your Dynasty League. So anyways, anything else you want to say before I head here?
No, we're good.
All right. Peace out, y'all.